All right, everybody. So, a little frustrated, dealing with some gremlins here. I got the electric fans all wired in. I got my main power feed, my relays, fuses all set over here on the passenger side wheel well. Ground's hooked up, power hooked up. I got the pins added to the PCM and those wired over to control the relays. But for whatever reason now, I can't get HP tuners to connect to the PCM. It just keeps telling me unable to connect to computer, unable to connect to computer. So that's got me kind of frustrated because it worked fine yesterday and connected without any issue. And I literally didn't change anything except add those two pins. And now the thing will not connect to HP tuners. So I'm gonna let that marinate for a while. I don't know what the deal is. And all right, everybody, here's where we're at. I've got the electric fans wired in, hooked up, and working. I finally got the computer to talk to HP tuners. I literally just took a break for like half an hour and then hooked it up and it worked. So I guess it was just in a bad mood. But I get the fans hooked up. I can get them to, I can manually turn them on in low range and high range. I can get them to come on automatically via the computer in low, but I can't get the higher second stage to be turned on by the computer. So I'm gonna have to learn a little bit more about how to make that happen. But I know it's hooked up and I know it works because I can go in through the VCM scanner and manually turn on stage 1 and stage 2 of the fans through the VCM scanner. So I know it's connected correctly to the computer. I just have to figure out why the computer doesn't want to turn the second stage on based on temperature. Tomorrow my intercooler gets delivered. So I need to get my transmission cooler, my auxiliary transmission cooler mounted and plumbed, because that's going to be behind the intercooler. So my plan is to get it mounted right in this empty space here. The stage 1 fan is behind the radiator here, so it should get the most airflow here. And then the intercooler will mount in front of it when that gets here. So I'm gonna find some pieces of metal. Conveniently, GM puts these little pre-done holes here. So I'm gonna use those and just create some tabs to mount onto my auxiliary transmission cooler. So I'm gonna get that mounted up. I also got all the wiring run for the front lights. None of them are working. I have a feeling it's just a blown fuse or something because it's no lights at all, and I checked all the bulbs and they're good. And I know I have the grounds hooked up. So I'm gonna figure out what the issue is with that also. But first priority right now is get the transmission cooler mounted. All right, everybody, so it's the next day. I left off last night. I got all of the transmission cooler plumbing done, the auxiliary cooler mounted here in the front. You may recognize I used some more pieces from the clutch steels out of the transmission rebuild, but we've got it all plumbed up. There's a nice space through the core support where the AC condenser lines would run on a civilian style K30. So I used that space. I use that space to run my transmission cooler lines through. I've got it hooked up off the output of the factory cooler to the input of the auxiliary, from the output of the auxiliary back to the transmission, and from the transmission to the input on the factory cooler. Now, unfortunately, I had to run my cooler lines outside of the frame and along the bottom of the frame. You can see where they run underneath here, right along the frame rail. I've got them well secured with P-clamps, wrapped with heat shielding where they come near the exhaust there, and then back up to the transmission. Now, unfortunately, there just wasn't space for me to run them inside of the frame rail where I would have liked to. So I'm thinking that outside of the frame rail is going to be fine, especially because I'm going to have to put a bit of a lift on this thing, probably about a 4-inch lift kit, in order to clear my crossover steering. So I think it's going to be just fine how it is. If I happen to notice any wear or any issues like that, then I'll have to route them a different way, or maybe put some solid steel lines on there. But I really think it's going to be fine just how it is. So the next bit of exciting news here, my intercooler came. So next project here is get the intercooler mounted to the front of this thing and start figuring out my charge air piping. It's going to be tight. I am really tight on space over here on the passenger side. So I'm going to have to get this thing mounted and try to figure out as best I can how I'm going to get the plumbing done. The intercooler mocked in place where I want it here. It's going to give it maximum airflow, should still fit behind the grill, and it's also going to line up with literally the only space that I can fit a 3-inch charge pipe through is right through here and up towards the turbo. And even that, it's going to be, I'm going to have to be pretty dang precise with my bends and where I put everything. So I've been fabricating up some little essentially extended bolts to use the top mounts, and they'll just go right up through the core support top up here. And then once I get those in place the way I want them, then I'll go ahead and I'll weld a couple tabs to the bottom of the core support to mount the bottom pieces right here. So far so good, just making my way through it. Plumbing this thing is going to be challenging, especially over here on the passenger side. But once I have it in place, then I'll work my way through that. One challenge at a time. Just chip away at it a little bit, little steps. So, got the intercooler there hanging by the top mounts. Pretty happy with how that turned out. So now I need to get my little lower mount tabs made up here, which a little nice piece of 90 will work perfect. And I think I'm just gonna harvest this. This was the jump start point that went here in the grill, but it's not going to fit obviously with the intercooler. So I think I'm going to take a couple strips out of it, and use that. It's already bent at a nice 90. So I'll use that to make my lower mount points. Easy peasy. Alright everybody, got the intercooler mounted. Should get plenty of airflow. Now the next step is get my intercooler plumbing figured out. I'm going to start with getting the driver's side run and connected up. I think that side's going to be just a little bit easier for me to get done. Then I'll do the passenger side. I'm waiting on another 90-degree coupler to come, just because I think that's going to make it a little bit easier to get that side done. But we're going to start on the driver's side. Man, you gotta love it when things go better than planned. So, I've got my piping all mocked up from intercooler through all the way up into intake manifold. I'm not gonna lie, I thought this was gonna take me a heck of a lot longer, but I was able to do it in a way that didn't have too many unions and is gonna fit and clear and make sense. So I'm pretty pumped. I don't think the passenger side is going to be quite as easy, but I'm glad the driver's side went well. I'm going to keep plugging along. I'm waiting on a reducer 90-degree for the passenger side piping, so I might stop here as far as intercooler goes for the day, but I'm pretty pumped about the progress I've made so far already. Alright team, we got the cold side fitted up and plumbed. Comes out of the intercooler, pokes through right there. I got just a hair of clearance the whole way around. Comes in on this side, right down there, comes up, makes a 90, comes over, 90, right into the intake. It actually went a lot smoother than I thought it was going to. But that was also the side that I expected to be the easier side. I think the hot side is going to be a little bit more challenging just because of my space limitations and the tightness that I have to run it through. But we'll get it there. It'll work. I have space that it'll all fit, so it's just a matter of getting it all routed to where it needs to be. So, moving on to the next thing, just chipping away, checking stuff off the list.